So I want to start with just a brief look at some of the capabilities that you're missing using the native toolset and really kind of highlight where they come in and when you're going to want to use them. So let's just start by kicking off the Group Policy Management console here. And we'll dive into any random group policy object, and by random I mean the default domain policy, of course. And actually this is one of the first places that you'll notice some of the missing capabilities. The ability to do backup and recovery from in this console is interesting enough, I suppose. But there's no real way to schedule it to happen. And that sort of lack of really natively integrated backup and recovery actually leads to a lot of the little issues that we can run into. So, for example, let's just dive into this one. And you've been in a group policy object before, I'm sure, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here. But my point is that as an administrator, anybody is capable of opening this thing up, going in, modifying any policies they want to. And when it's done, what they're saving back to the group policy object, to the actual file, is a completed new object. And it's completely replacing what was there before. So let's say I go into Windows Components. I scroll down to something fun like Windows Remote Shell, and I'm going to allow Windows Remote Shell access. So let's enable this. Hit OK, boom, it's enabled. All I have to do now is exit out of here, and that has been saved. That is now the new effective default domain policy. If it turns out someone doesn't like that, it's going to be very difficult for them to figure out, first of all, where that came from. It could be on any of my group policy objects, could literally be sitting anywhere on the operating system. But at the same time, it's going to be tough even when you get inside of the GPO. There's no way to compare things. There are no change management tools. There's no way to go in and pull a prior version and see what was changed between any two versions of a GPO. There's also no auditing. Now that I've done that, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that I did it, what I changed. There's no way to go into the event log and determine what I changed or anything else. I also don't have that ability to edit offline. I mean, as soon as I make that change, it's real. New computers that are logging onto the domain or computers that are refreshing their group policy are going to get whatever changes I've made, even if I wasn't done. Maybe I haven't tested that or experimented with it enough. So it can be very, very difficult to really effectively manage group policy through that tool set. Now, I'll tell you the other area where people will sometimes tell me, well, you can make up for those things, and that's Windows PowerShell, at least if you're on Windows Server 2008 R2, because it has got a wonderful group policy module. You'll probably find that on domain controllers, but if you're on a Windows 7 computer and you install the Remote Server Administration Toolkit, or RSAT, then you'll pick up that group policy module. So let's just take a look at what this can do for you. We'll just look at the commands that were added by that module and see if any of these things can help make up for what we were missing in the GPMC. And right at the top of the list, there's Backup GPO, and a little bit further down, there's a Restore GPO. So we certainly could automate backup and recovery that way. It's possible that we could write a little PowerShell script or command file, batch file if you prefer, put those backup commands into that, and then schedule it to run. Oh gosh, you could even schedule it to run every hour if you wanted to. It depends on how often you think people are in messing with your GPOs. But there's not really a compare. Now, you'll notice we do about most of the way through the gets here. We've got get preference registry value and get registry value. So you certainly could write a script that got all of the values out of a group policy object and then saved that as a baseline. I'll show you just a non-group policy example of what I'm talking about. If I run get process and export that to an XML file called prox. Or actually, you know what? Let's do the real thing and call it baseline.xml. That creates a baseline, and you could do the same thing. It would be a much, much larger script. You'd have to run a lot of commands in order to get all of the preference registry values and registry values out of group policy. But let's say you did that. And then let's say somebody made some changes. So since I'm demonstrating with processes, I'll just make a couple changes by launching two processes. And now I can use PowerShell's built-in diff command. And I'll have it compare the current process set against what was in that baseline XML file. And again, this would be a much larger script if you were doing it. And oh, there are some tricks. It turns out that I really only want to compare the name. It would be a much longer script, but this is going to show me the differences between the two. Trusted Installer is not currently running, but Calc and Notepad are, and they weren't in the baseline. So you could conceivably build this to sort of do some comparison and auditing and change management. From an auditing perspective, the one area that you're really still missing is who made the change. If I really went through the effort of writing this comparison script, I could tell you what changes were made between a prior copy of a GPO and a new copy, but I'm still not going to be able to tell you who did it. So, ultimately, these really 5 key capabilities: backup and recovery, change control and change management, comparison, auditing, and the ability to edit GPOs offline, are just not available to us in the native toolset, but they're some of the most important capabilities that we can add to our environment. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the blog post this month.